Joining us now is Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. He's a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and was recently deployed to the border with the Air National Guard. Good morning, Congressman.
Hey. Good morning.
Do you think the president should shut down the southern border?
No, I don't think so. I think, the economic impact will be significant. It's our third largest trading partner, so there's a lot of commerce in and out of Mexico. Secondarily, I think we're really in a fight right now with Central and South America for the heart and soul of what the future of that region looks like. We've neglected our hemisphere for too long, and we're seeing the results of that, not just in the migration issue, but in Chinese influence, for instance, in Central America and Latin America. And I think the more we, put up closed borders or withdraw aid from those areas, we're actually leaving a vacuum for China to come in and fill, because they're happy to write whatever check we pull back from El Salvador, for instance.
Well, let's talk about that, because that's another thing that the president is considering, is basically punishing those countries where migrants are coming from, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, by cutting off aid. What do you think happens if he does that?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of it, although, look, I understand the kind of thought behind it, because we're giving money to these countries. We're expecting to have an outcome as a result of this money, and we're not seeing that outcome. In fact, we're seeing from a lot of these countries almost encouragement for people to leave and come here, because they get rid of their unemployment issue in their mind. They're like, oh, if you're unemployed, go to the United States. So while I understand that, I actually think that a longer-term investment in the region, and this is something I've actually been complimentary of this administration, is seemingly a pivot back to this hemisphere when we look at like Venezuela and Cuba and things. But that also includes development in Central and Latin America, because it's when they have hope and opportunity in Honduras, for instance, that they stay in their country. My guess is the vast majority of the people coming here actually would prefer to be able to stay in their country, but they feel like they have to come to the United States for an opportunity. And while I'm all for border security, I certainly have a heart for what's happening there.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that the leader of El Salvador believed that the aid has worked. I'll just read to you what the Vice Minister of Justice said just yesterday about the threat of aid going away. The decision to cut funding contradicts the results of what we have accomplished together. The fact is that migration from El Salvador is declining, thanks to our work. The truth is that we are really appreciative of these partnerships. They've made a big impact here. The question we have now is, why would we stop doing something that is working? Similarly, the commissioner of the Customs and Border Patrol says what El Salvador is doing is working, both on the security front and on the economic opportunity front. So it just seems like this is using a large hammer for something that is more nuanced.
Well, and I think there may be some success in El Salvador, maybe not in Honduras or Guatemala. It's putting these three kind of triangle countries together may be a mistake. But let's keep in mind, when it comes to El Salvador, too, we have a new president that's incoming there, and I have a lot of optimism for him. But the current president of El Salvador just de-recognized recently Taiwan's independence, and they did that because China started investing a bunch of money in El Salvador. So the idea that El Salvador has been really big friends of the United States isn't true. But I think to look at and say, it's kind of like with terrorism issues. It's hard to prove where you've been successful in counterterrorism because there's been no attack. It's the same when it comes to aid to Central America. There may have been way more migration than there has been without it, so it's hard to prove.
Well, Stephen Miller, the president's, one of his top advisors, says that the families that are showing up on the border, that their claims of asylum are meritless. Do you agree that they're meritless?
It depends. Literally, I'm not going to take a big hammer on all of this, because there are some that may not have merit and some that do have merit. Because, if you're leaving a situation where your neighborhood, you fear for your life, and literally you've seen people die, then you have merit. Now, you also may have merit to make that claim in, because according to international asylum law, you're supposed to do it in the next country. So I think we need to be very judicious about our asylum laws here. We need to have compassion. But I think, as I've said on your show before, when you have the cartels recruiting people to bring them into the United States, and these people are paying their entire life savings, and many of them are getting sexually assaulted or dying on that journey, that's not compassion. I want to build a wall. I want it secure. But I also want an immigration system that's welcoming, that keeps up with the fact that we have to have growth in this country and does it the right way.
You know, it's funny that you say the word judicious because, yes, it does. They do need to be adjudicated. That's the only way to find out if they're meritless or not meritless. So keeping them at bay and shutting the border, you'll never know if their claims have merit or not. And some people have suggested having more judges to do just that. But I do want to move on because we're running out of time to health care because, of course, you're on the committee that oversees the Health and Human Services Department. And so when the president tells voters, trust Republicans, we'll come up with a plan after 2020, should voters trust him?
Well, I don't know. We failed at this before. As you know, we had a plan that I thought was actually pretty good out of the House, went to the Senate, it failed there. So we've shown that we couldn't get that done. Now, I frankly think it's time. I've said this for a while. It's high time for Republicans and Democrats to try to get out of this only win and the other side loses way of health care. Let's try to find areas where we can agree and fix this problem. But honestly, probably till next November, it's not going to happen. But I think we need to have these conversations. Yeah, sure.
I mean, I appreciate your candor on that. And it sounded a couple days ago as though the president wanted to have those conversations and wanted to come up with a plan. And then he just last night said, we're not going to do it till after 2020. It sounds like, I don't know if reality struck or why he changed his tune. What's your sense?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I know this. I know that something's got to be done. Obamacare is the law of the land, and I look at this and say, if there's areas where it's failing, I think there are, we should all try to find areas where we can fix it, because real people's lives are being impacted right now, and I don't want Medicare for all, but I also understand there's a role for the government on health care, and I think 80% of Americans agree with that statement. Let's find how we can fix it.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger, we always appreciate you coming on New Day. Thank you.
You bet. See ya.